I'm Dr. Krishna and I am a research fellow at Center for Capital Markets and Risk Management at IIM Bangalore. I have a PhD in Finance and Control from IIMB. Before my stint at CCMRM, I have worked as a faculty in various business schools. I welcome you to this conversation about savings and investments with Mr. Deepak Jain and Mr. Shailendra Kumar from Fin A to Z. Now, Fin A to Z is a SEBI registered investment advisory company started by IIM and IIT graduates. I welcome you, Deepak and Shailendra, to this conversation. Deepak Jain has been very passionate about personal finance. Well, he has worked in the likes of Tech Mahindra and SAP Labs before co-founding Fin A to Z in 2014. Shailendra has strong entrepreneurial instincts and has a goal of developing a process-driven company. Now, before co-founding Fin A to Z, he was with Saskin and CDOT. I welcome you, Shailendra, to this conversation. The topic of the first episode is post-Covid-19, have the risk profiles of Indians changed? The first question I would like to ask you, Shailendra. Now, is there a difference in the way you advise different cohorts of people? For example, do you give advice to doctors differently, and then to millennials, and then to professionals who are working in companies differently? So, how is it?
Firstly, thanks for inviting us for this session. Thank you, Shwarya. And regarding professions, yes, there are some minor differences which happen. Let's say an airline pilot may be adequately covered for insurance already as compared to an IT professional. But as far as the investments are concerned, they are typically very similar framework is followed for all of them, right? So let me just go through the framework which we follow for most of the IT professionals who are customers with us. It is basically standing on the three pillars. One is a goal, that is the reason why are you investing, right? What is the purpose of your investment? Second is a tenure. So every goal is going to have a particular tenure with it, that this is the duration for which you want to invest the money for. And based on these two things, and a third important parameter is about the individual's risk profiling. So we merge these three things and then tell that for your short-term goals, you should be investing into safer instruments. And for a long-term goal, you should take risk. Now, that is where it gets tricky, right? For long-term investments, you are saying that take risk, right? And how much risk to be taken? So that is where your individual risk profile comes into picture. That you devise a way that is diversification, or you take any other way in which you construct the portfolio and control the risk in the portfolio so that the downside is limited and is within the comfort zone of the investor. And once this is done, then only you can say that you are going to get a good risk-adjusted return in the long run. So there is nothing else which will differ primarily as compared to different professions. It is these three things which typically summarizes it.
So is there any other risk factor that needs to be considered?
Yes. So this one which I am talking about is primarily the, I'll say, young professionals and IT professionals who are very comfortable to plan for a long-term goal which is coming in the future. Right? But then we have seen practically that having good amount of money, right, or the amount of the money, right, plays a very important part in an individual's life, that how much risk he can actually be comfortable to take. So we have seen two categories of people in this. One is young working professionals who are having monthly surplus and are comfortable to invest on a monthly basis. They are actually comfortable to take slightly more risk in their long-term goals. And it is primarily because they are seeing that based on this risk I will be able to get a better corpus in the long run. Right? And then the second category of people is who have actually invested for say a couple of years. They have saved sizable amount of money, and that money is like more than their yearly salary. Now they are slightly more risk averse as compared to the previous set of category of people. So these are the two factors. Yeah.
So is there something different with the millennials? What do you think about that?
Millennials are very casual about life. I should not generalize it, it may talk about some biases. But then they are very comfortable spending money. Right? And this is happening primarily because of the job opportunities and the confidence in their own abilities and the comfort by which they can actually earn money, which was not there in the previous generations. But then having said that, I'll still say that they are still having the vices of greed and indecision, which is there, which affects them. And that is what the reason is that millennials, otherwise I'll say they are pretty much same risk profile as any other individual. And if I typically talk about a risk profile, it is basically a factor of age, your assets, your loan or liabilities, or your own previous financial investment experiences. Right? All this put together forms a risk profile, and every millennium also, I'll say, is having these risk profile very similar to any other individual. So not much of a difference from that perspective.
I'd like to ask the next question to Mr. Deepak Jain here. Deepak, post-COVID, have the risk profiles of individuals changed? Have people come in and express their fears to you that they have lost a lot of amount of money? How is the situation in the market right now?
Yeah, so before answering that question, let us try to look at the data itself. So what we did was, we looked at Association of Mutual Fund of India website, and we tried to see what is the kind of flow of equity into equity mutual funds before COVID and post-COVID. And what we found was that it used to be 10,000 crore per month pre-COVID was the flow into an equity mutual fund, which reduced to almost 3,000 crore just after COVID, before becoming negative post-July. So that is something that that explains probably that there has been a fear factor post-COVID, and people actually have taken out money from equity mutual funds post-COVID. However, if we look at the data at our company level, we don't see the same thing. What we see is that people actually continued with their SIPs, monthly SIPs more or less, barring a few stray incidents where some of our customers may have lost their jobs. Then what we did was, we spoke to our fellow SEBI registered investment advisors like us, and they also told a similar story, that they also did not see too much of dip in the investments from their investors. So we see that there's a dichotomy in terms of what overall a general investor has done and what someone who is being advised by an advisor, professional, has done. So there has been a marked change in behavior. So that makes us believe that probably someone who was getting an advice fared better, because definitely it was a very, very bad time to sell equities during those times. Other thing that we saw was a change in mindset of investor. So what we saw was that before COVID, generally people, some of the millennials, what Shailendra was also talking in just before this, is that probably some of the millennials are not very, very serious about their future goals. And probably they cannot relate to retirement, which probably is 25-30 years away for them. However, these tough times taught them probably, and they became more serious about their future. And that is one marked change in the mindset that we saw. Another change in the mindset that we saw from the investors was seriousness about health insurance. So health insurance, again, people used to be very, very comfortable that they have an insurance from their employer. And then during these tough times, some of those people or some of your relatives might have lost their jobs. Especially during these times when there are very high chances of getting ill. So that also is another trend that we see, and people are more serious and they now understand that they cannot just rely on their employer health insurance, and they should be covering themselves and their family in addition to that as well.
The next question I would like to pose to Shailendra. In your website, I saw that the main motivation for you to start Fin A to Z is to reduce misselling of products that happens in the financial market. Now, do you think misselling happens in the financial market? And what do you mean by that? What do you mean by misselling?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's a sad truth, but yes, misselling does happen in the financial markets. And SEBI has mandated all its license holders to actually ensure the suitability of the financial products. Now, the very act of giving a financial product to someone which is not suitable for him or her is known as misselling. Right? Now, there are various examples, right, in which you can see that how a misselling has happened in a particular environment or a scenario. But I would like to here give an example of, say, an endowment policy being sold to someone saying that it will be good for your child education. Right? Now, in this, I'll take an example. Right? Let us say someone has taken around 1 lakh rupee cover for endowment policy for 35 years, and he is supposed to invest around 3,600 odd rupees per year. So I'm just dividing it by lakh and telling you per lakh figures. And cover is for 1 lakh, and maturity amount will be roughly around 2.5 lakhs. Now, in this, if you compare this with a combination of a PPF and a term insurance. So for a term insurance of 1 lakh, you are just supposed to give 250 rupees per annum. And the remaining amount, you don't take any additional risk and invest into PPF. You will still get a cover of 1 lakh for throughout the tenure, and you will get more than 50% of the money, around 3.9 lakh at the time of maturity. So someone has sold this product to you just because it was good for that particular person, rather than actually this was a good product for you.
Okay. And why do you think misselling happens?
Again, there are multiple reasons. So 3 reasons which I can specifically talk about here. First is lack of knowledge of the financial products by the person who is selling. And to be honest, it is really tough nowadays to keep track of all the new investment opportunities, and there are so many options available in the market that even an established institute is finding it tough to keep its all sales force updated about all the financial products which are there. And that knowledge is to be shared with everyone, and there is a considerable amount of time, effort and energy from a company wide which has to be there to actually enable that. And that doesn't happen, it costs money. And second reason is basically you are having a greed, right? An investor himself, right? You will find it very, very surprising that the vice like a greed, investor plays by that and is able to fall into trap by someone who is selling a product which is giving much higher interest as compared to an FD, right? Without realizing that what is the risk associated with it. So in this, investor is also falling prey for say schemes like stock tips or pyramid schemes. So investor himself is also to be blamed when you are saying there is misselling which is happening in the market.
Absolutely, very well summarized, Shailendra. Now, what should the investor do about it? And is the regulator actually doing something about misselling of products?
Yes, so investors have to be more cautious about what is the kind of risk which they are taking, and they should understand the fine prints, if I may call so, and understand what is the risk which they are taking. and that is the main thing. And you should always compare the returns as compared to a risk-free FD returns. If there is anything which you are getting higher than risk-free FD return, there is a risk which you may not have understood, but you are taking that risk, right? And that way you will be able to, as an investor, prevent yourself to be sold any other product like that. And SEBI fortunately has come up with the investment advisor regulation in 2013, in which they have given an advisor a fiduciary responsibility to act in the customer's interest. This, I believe, is a very, very welcome step by SEBI, and is a very, very right step in the right direction to avoid mis-selling in the market.
Well, after conversing with Deepak and Shailendra, I certainly feel that pandemics can come and go, but if you are financially secure, then no pandemic can affect you in any way whatsoever. Well, thank you for listening. Please wait and watch for the next episode. Thank you.
Thank you.